If you have the anti-hopping law, you may not even have the Langkah Sheraton. So what I'm saying is that the anti-hopping law, if we had it then, you may not have the situation that we have today.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Ballot Box. I'm Dashran Johan. This episode is part of the new mini-series called Road to GE. On our second episode, we are going to be discussing party hopping. Because Langkah Sheraton came as a shock, Prime Minister at that time, Tun Dr. Mahathir, lost his majority when a small faction of Parti Keadilan Rakyat members defected from the party, teamed up with Bersatu, which was also part of Pakatan Harapan coalition at the time, and formed a new coalition with BN, PAS, GPS, and many other smaller parties to form the new government. So since then, a lot has happened, but what has been at the center of a lot of discussions is the anti-hopping law. The people really want an anti-hopping law. To put it simply, a law that would prevent frogs. So joining me on the show to discuss this is YB Azalina Othman. She's the MP for Pengerang as well as member of the Parliamentary Select Committee PSC on anti-hopping law. Welcome to the show, YB.
Thank you so much, BFM.
All right. So let's start at the top, right? Because the issue of party hopping has been plaguing Malaysia for a very long time. This isn't something new to people who really observe politics. For the longest time, let's say when Barisan Nasional wins the elections, the losing side, there will be people hopping over to BN. And even when Pakatan Harapan won in 2018, immediately Tun Dr. Mahathir called for members of the losing side to jump over to Pakatan Harapan. Why wasn't there pushback from the political players, or at least massive pushback, all these years prior to Langkah Sheraton?
Well, to be honest, if we had the anti-hopping law then, I don't think so. Our MPs from my party, Barisan Nasional, would have left in a massive jump. We would have gone in parliament with the numbers that we have, which is almost more than 60 seats.
Right.
And now we are left with only 40 seats. And that itself would be the answer to your question, was because when you understand the way the constitution works is that you have an Article 10, there is an article that talks to you about freedom, the freedom of association, and there is a certain general understanding a political party is a political association. So you're allowed to move because that is part of the whole concept of democracy. You're able to show your support or your discontent. It's your prerogative. But what happens now is that when it brings disruption, some people tell me, well, it's an element or an argument of political morality.
Right.
Because you must remember, one of the biggest challenge in our country is that when you go for election, you don't sell yourself as a person. But if you represent a political party, the deeming effect is that you're representing the party.
Right.
So you're running on the party ticket, unless you're independent. If you're independent, everybody knows, well, sometimes it's a protest vote, so we want an independent candidate. But in our country, democracy is such a way that when you run for election, any numbers can run in. There's no limitation. You don't have proportionate numbers, or it must be a certain percentage, proportionate representation, area representation. We don't. It's a free for all. Right. So when the voters go into and they line up, say, for more than 60 minutes or 120 minutes, and then they decide to vote for out of 10 names, 5 names, and they make a selection, and they have expectation. So for me, being someone with a legal background, I consider it as a contractual relationship between the voter and who they vote for. And even if you win by one, you win. So then you win, there is a legitimate expectation of the voter that you're representing. And of course, some voters, I cannot deny, may vote for you on element of values. What you represent, your party represents, the candidate represents. But assuming suddenly you vote for A, like what we have today, you go and order something online for A, then you get B. You get furious, you call up customer service. But what do you do if you vote a politician who's already angkat sumpah for 5 years? How do you raise concern? So I think the preamble of our discussion would be that is the understanding or the historical side or the logical aspect of it. But I'm going to emphasize on the element of the moral duty, the political morality. So when the Sheraton move occurred, I think the voters are really upset because they may feel that they voted for this coalition,
right,
and something else comes in. And then they say daripada pintu belakang, bumbung, all kind of allegations being made. But fortunately or unfortunately, when we had the COVID pandemic, everything was on status quo. Because we had to settle COVID and the government declared the country into emergency period for 6 months.
Right. Why is it so important? Like we talked about, right? After Langkah Sheraton, there was massive disgruntlement among the public. A lot of people felt like, we voted for one coalition, but then another one ended up in power and so on and so forth. Why is it so important that we have an anti-hopping law now?
Well, I think legally speaking, if you don't amend the constitution, of course you can move many, many times.
Yep.
The law allows you to move at any time. Can be 24/7, 8 o'clock,
Right.
9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And I think what people are very uncomfortable is the element of uncertainties. To run a country, you need stability.
Yeah.
It's been proven historically. Today we are a coalition government. Even before it was a coalition government. No coalition government can last more than 22 months. Any countries in the world, whether it's a Westminster system or not a Westminster system, because coalition government is about shared power, and shared power is very, very difficult. Now, assuming you're already in a position of power, you want to stay longer in power, and you keep buying members of parliament to stay in longer time in parliament, you're going to cause more disruption in the long run.
Right.
Because I've written so many articles explaining that when you have a coalition government, the principles and policies that you have are not even shared. It's totally different. I keep giving an example of my party, UMNO. I consider myself as a right-wing party, but it's centre-right.
Right.
Because we are in Barisan Nasional, which is a multiracial coalition, so it's centre-right. And then you have, like, for example, Pakatan National, which is a political party run by Malay party, which is considered right. And PAS, for example, is a right party, which is Islamic party. So you sit down with them, there are many things that may overlap. Say, for example, on child marriages. Not everyone in my party would agree that children below the age of 16 should get married, for example. Even in Islam allows it. No, I'm giving you just some practical example.
Right.
But my party allows the intellectual discourse.
Right.
There may be some political parties say, no, the religion does allow it, so you should not even discuss about it. So this is all differences of beliefs, policies, what a political party is carrying, the banner. So when you are centre-right and then you're right, and then you're continuously looking to issues, and I always tell everyone today, my party is only 34%.
Right.
We don't have control numbers, in any situation. And it's very difficult because we are being blamed all the time. So I think basically what we want from anti-hopping, I'm quoting that as an example, is to explain that you need stability. Now, you tell me, okay, well, what about if you decide to go in independent and then you say that, well, maybe you decide to join venture with the ruling party. What do? Do you jump to the party? No, the response is, of course, you can come out with what's happening today, an MOU. Yep. Or you can do it a post-election coalition agreement, You can say, look, I agree on certain terms. This is the expectation of my constituency. So you can look at many ways to skin the cat. That's it. But to keep continuously jump, and you cause the voters to feel betrayed. And the biggest concern that I have as a MP for almost 20 over years is the voters may not want to come out.
Right.
Why should you come out? You vote for A, you get B. Who wants to wait for 60 minutes?
Everyone's so disillusioned, really.
Yeah, you're tired. Because who do you go to? Today, the banner is this party. Tomorrow, you jump another party. That's why we call them frogs.
Right.
Because you're jumping. And you know how many species of frogs are there in Malaysia? More than 100 species. And I'm not adding one more human frogs, right?
Absolutely.
I hope I don't get arrested for this.
You talk about writing so many articles, and indeed you have so many articles. You have given so many interviews. So I thank you for doing another one, repeating yourself for the 100th time. Why are you so passionate about this anti-hopping law? Because you've even pushed, when you felt at a time when there was not much movement going on, you were like, it doesn't matter, I'm going to push for a private member's bill. Why are you particularly invested in this?
Well, I think when I was the deputy speaker, if you do remember, it's really confusing up there. Because when being an MP from the floor, you stand up and you speak on your constituency.
Right.
When you're a deputy speaker or you speaker, especially in our country, a deputy speaker comes from the MPs themselves. You can't be partisan when you're up there because you have to be fair, right? You're listening. And when you listen, you really have to listen very carefully because when you're up there, it's different like being on the floor.
Right.
On the floor, you're in like an attack on the bark and biting mode. When you're up there, you're on a listening mode. And then I suddenly realized when I was sitting there continuously, the issues keep flipping over and over. Sometimes if I don't look up, I don't know who the person is, because sometimes it comes on the right, then on the left, and then on the far back. And then it's the same thing that it rotates again. It's very confusing. And I don't know whether the confusion is because of the fact that we were in the COVID period. And I believe, I was personally very upset when the Prime Minister then didn't allow Parliament to sit. Because I felt the fact that when you have COVID and the challenges of the vaccine, the Parliament must sit to allow the MPs to voice concern of the voters, of the rakyat. Okay, then when I sat up there and I was realizing it, then I felt that, there must be you won't play any sports. There must be rules of the game, or rules of the matches. So it'd be easier to really understand. So I went round, I resigned as a deputy speaker because I felt that being up there, there are a lot of things I can't carry. Although it doesn't say you can't, but even to debate, I couldn't voice my concern for almost 2 years because I was sitting up there. Right. So I tendered my resignation, nothing personal. So I wanted to speak more from the floor because I felt that there are a lot of things that my voters, my constituency would want to have a say coming back. So I submitted private member's bill because the standing order allows that. See, in our country, you must understand, when you say legislative, the upper house or the lower house as right. MPs, our first responsibility after we win, we take an oath. So if you read, I'm always quoting Winston Churchill, this is because of you are representing, yes, your party at the same time as your voters. So you have a duty of care, a fiduciary duty, there's a legitimate expectation. So I wrote a lot of articles continuously because I wanted the people out there, the public, the executive, the judiciary, and among my peers, the MPs, to understand that you can't think that the voters is only coming to you every 5 years. That's it. Come to me, vote for me, and bye-bye, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, in any relationship, whether it's a love affair or marriage relationship or even a working relationship, there is certain expectation. And servicing your constituency at that moment, I can also understand that some MPs find it very difficult because when we were opposition for 22 months, if you do remember that, suddenly our government for 60 over years since 1957, and then we became opposition. It was very difficult to run the constituency. So I can imagine if some of my colleagues decided to jump and support the government for the day so that they're able to service the constituency. Because the rule is as such that, when you are not government, so you do not benefit. But that's really unfair. I personally think Constituency Development Fund, for example, is very, very fair. Right. Because when the voters vote for the MPs, say out of 7 names, they vote for one, and the majority wins, what happens to those that voted for the losers? Are you saying to me that you have to treat them like a stepchild? It doesn't work that way. You still have to service. And then when we were in the losing party for the 22 months, to be very, very honest, people were still coming to our doors. They didn't go to the government of the day. They still come back to us because we were always there. They knew where our office were, but we have no capacity. And I felt that with the government looking at the MOU today, rightly or wrongly, it depends on who you speak to, it's fair. Because you have to service the constituency. You have to service. You have no choice. Now, if you say because you have to service the constituency, therefore you jump, because you need to jump to have that funding, the license, the permission. I mean, as I said, the element of the moral obligation, the political obligation, it makes a lot of sense. But what about if you jump because of personal gratification?
Right.
What about you jump because you want to be a cabinet minister? What about you jump because you want to escape from being charged by the enforcement agency, whether SPRM or PDRM? So that are questions that need to be asked. And I think for voters today, they wouldn't really understand. All they want is an MP that they knock at the door, can handle the issues that you have promised to help me. That's why I voted for you. But I don't like the idea that, the rakyat will come in and say, look, I voted for A, then I get B. And I think we cannot be unfair. We have to respect the voters and respect the people. And that's why we're here, because whatever we have here is because of the people. I think in the future of the PRU 15, my biggest wish for the general election is that we must have professional politicians, people who put the people out there. If you want to be a businessman, a businesswoman, go into business. But don't be becoming a politician and everything you want to do, everything you want to touch, and then you make it difficult to raise issues of concern because you have got vested interests.
Right.
So it would be really unfair to voters that have a high expectation on you as an MP.
Yeah. And YB, this like we mentioned, like this is something you've been pushing for since, the private members bill, even before that. What has that journey been like, trying to get, the anti-party hopping law off the ground, negotiating with various players. Talk to me about your efforts in getting this off the ground, because you have been one of the very key figures to get us to at least, some movements in the anti-party hopping law. So tell me about your journey and what have you been doing?
Well, I think if you look back at the archives, you can see that my private members bill, the first round, was rejected, and also the second round. And it's a lonely journey. I knocked doors of political party presidents of both sides. I had permission from my party president. I went to the doors. I met Tun Mahathir. I met everyone, even Anwar Ibrahim. I met everyone, not with a SD lah. I just met with my private members.
Yes, I think these days we have to clarify.
I have to clarify. So I met. I explained. I explained. I mean, to be very, very honest, they understood. They really understand the concerns I have. But it was very difficult to get a reaction. Maybe they had their own evaluation or their own challenges. But I thought that, especially Pakatan Harapan, being a political party that had to face all the frogs, would be reacting more positively or immediately. But it took time because we went online. I think there were a lot of talks by NGOs, especially Bersatu. Bersatu has been mooting all this. No response. I think the only thing that we had a response, although it was part of the MOU that there is a clause on the anti-hopping law, was the discussion when the MOU is to be expired in July, end of July. Then there was a reaction. Because I think most of the political parties that signed, because I believe today, even though the government is portion of the government is my party, but the MOU between the opposition and the ruling party, the government bench and the opposition and the backbenchers, the MOU represented, is really moving the agenda for the country in Parliament. And part of it, they have the anti-hopping law. So I think what must have happened is that when they were talking and discussing, suddenly they realized like, oh my God, it's not so simple to talk about frogs. Because when you talk about frog, the jumping of the frog is one thing. The repercussion of the jumping is another thing. And then they're asking the question, but what about if somebody goes in for election, decides to be an independent? Can you penalize a person for deciding to jump? If you sell yourself or you offer yourself as an independent member, you should be able to do whatever you want to do because you're a free agent, literally. So I think along that minus, subtracting, I think when they're looking to all that, they realize that, look, this is not so simple. And then you have the Constitution, and the Constitution allows a lot of things because in our Constitution, it's a written Constitution. We're not like the Westminster system in UK, which is not a written Constitution. So that when a Member of Parliament takes oath, right, under our Constitution, he or she is given a lot of immunity and protection in Parliament to talk about parliamentary issues. Now, there's a lot of challenges. It's a trigger point whereby I've been writing about this element wording of crossing the floor. Because if you decide not to vote on your party wishes and vote on your conscience, can you be punished by the party? And if the party punishes you, are you jumping? Is it a... So now the terminology has extended into a involuntary jump and a voluntary jump. So it's like a voluntary frog jumping or involuntary frog jumping. If you are terminated from your party, you're being sanctioned, you're being penalized, you're being punished, it's an involuntary jump. What happened in Bersatu when some of them decide to form a new set of government. But what about those who willingly want to jump? So the definition becomes wider and wider and wider. So of course in the beginning the journey was very simple, straightforward. Then when the government picked it up and decided to put the Parliamentary Select Committee by having a lot of political party representative, I thought it was much more better because it was more structured.
Right.
But unfortunately, the way the country works is that every discussion of law, the Attorney General's chambers comes in. So that is the lawyers for the government. Now, the Attorney General's chambers, being the lawyers for the government, of course, would have a lot of opinion, especially conservative opinion. That's their duty. You can't blame them for that. But having politicians sits there. Now, you must understand one of the most important thing on the PSSC, which is very, very important in any relationship of Westminster system, is that the cabinet that derives a policy to make laws, when they bring it to Parliament and it's sitting on the table of the MPs, which is called the Blue Bill, and then if it's pushed to the Select Committee, the Select Committee has more powers than the cabinet.
Right.
So now the decision is the Select Committee represented by the party. So this anti-hopping bill is a bill of political parties. It's not the bill of the cabinet. So you think, well, this is what the cabinet wants. No, the cabinet is not in charge anymore. The representative of the cabinet is represented by the Minister of Law and some members from political party who are front bench, who are ministers. Okay. So the Prime Minister is called the Ketua Majlis. So he's in charge of Parliament. It says that he sets the date. He sets the agenda. But for the anti-hopping, he can't make a decision. He can delay it. But he can't say, I want it, the cabinet wants it this way, that way. Because the Select Committee, when it goes to the Select Committee table, the Select Committee is in charge.
Right.
Now, that is a good part.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about the mechanics of all of this. Because like you said, talking about frogs from a moralistic perspective can sound easy, right? Okay, we just don't want that to happen. And then once you start discussing the nitty-gritties, it becomes a bit challenging. So we know there are various versions of party hopping laws that have been discussed. There's various ways of executing the law. So let's sort of look at like a simplified version and a more the recall elections, which is something that you and Bersi are more in favor of. So when we talk about, let's say, this a very straightforward version of an anti-hopping law without recall elections, what does that entail? Could you walk us through what would that mean?
I think the first obvious definition on the way you look at it is when you jump, right? You run under party A, or you run under this seat, you win, then you decide to move. Now, that's basically jumping.
Right.
Doesn't matter your reasons or your justification. No. But that is if you're individual MPs. But assuming you move as a party and you decide to move with the government for the day, you can't say that's jumping, because basically what you're doing is that it's like a MOU, or like a post-election agreement whereby you decide to move as a group. Now that's not considered jumping because you move as a group. So the whole party agrees, because that's basically the element of when I say political morality. You do it properly, you do it by the front door, you explain to your members, you justify. No, that's not hopping. The hopping comes in when you quietly decide to find there's a hole to jump, you jump, You decide for your own justification why you want to jump. Or, this because of this. No, that one is a bit different. One of the things that I wanted from a recall is that it doesn't matter on how or the justification of you jumping. My belief is that you must let the voters decide.
Right.
I think you remember Tan Sri Syaril Samad. He was from UMNO, right? And he went to BIP, and then he decided to move. So what happens is that you have to also look at Article 10, which is an enabling clause. You have to amend that. Then you talk about Article 48. 48 says that if you willingly leave your seat, you lose your seat, you can't run anymore for 5 years. Now, we have to remove that. Because even though you jump, the key now is that to allow you to contest again. That's fair.
Yes.
Because you know why? Say, for example, you represent one party and then you win because it's a party ticket. We say, that chair belongs to the party, blah, 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 blah. And you say, morally, I don't like what the party is doing. So he says, he or she says, I'm going to run again.
Yeah.
Show you that the people want me. That's fair. So you have to remove Article 48 to allow that. Because you cannot punish the person from running again. Yeah. Because you must allow them to. You can't say, no. You already jumped, you cannot come back. I mean, like, if you divorce, you can marry again. It doesn't matter. The point in hand is that you can offer yourself again. Now, the problem comes in is that assuming you keep jumping and you keep running so many times. So the whole purpose of recall, in very simple English, is that, wait, hold on for a while. Let the public make a decision whether they want you to come back or not. Because sometimes a recall is whereby you pull back the seat to the public so that you don't waste time and run for election, because every by-election costs a lot of money. Say, assuming you have 100,000 voters, you have to go again and again and again. It's very hard. Now, to address that is the practical challenging that you face. Now, to address that, if you have a recall, you work with SPR, you pause for a while. Let's go on a certain percentage. If the percentage says, it depends on the percentage. Some people 20%, some people say less than 20%. The percentage says, look, after evaluating, SPR says, look, maybe we should, right? Or you should stay. Now, political parties don't like recall.
Yes.
Because they want to control the seat. They want to take back the seat and no, it's mine, it's not yours. That's one interpretation. But the voters may say, hey, excuse me, I don't care. I don't like your party. I like the candidate. So that the government and the select committee is still talking on the recall. So maybe it would be a part 2, I'm not sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's give some examples, right? In terms of how it would work in the simplified low-hanging fruit party hopping law versus the recall election. So let's say there's party kuching or something like that, and then Ahmad decides to hop midway. For whatever reasons, he decides to jump to party kambing. Okay, if let's say there is no recall elections, if we go for the simplified version, what would that mean? Does that mean that
he can run again?
So, but does it immediately trigger by-elections, or how does it work?
No, of course you can. It triggers by-election because SPR comes in because there is a timeline. Okay, but then if assuming Ahmad decides to join the party kambing, then tomorrow morning he wakes up, he say, well, I want to join party ayam now.
Yeah.
So he can do it so many times.
And he will just keep triggering.
He loses the seat, he runs back. He loses the seat, he runs back and he wins. For his ego, maybe he wants to keep running. Yeah, he can, of course. Because there's no timeline. There's no term line. Like, you cannot run 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. No, it doesn't say that. No, the purpose of the recall is to stop that sort of abuse.
Right.
Or maybe a recall is seen much better in explanation that if the party wants to punish you, to take back your seat, you have a recall, like an insurance, like you buy insurance, so that the candidate is able to say that, wait, hold on. The rakyat doesn't want another election. The rakyat wants you to stay on, or it's much easier to simplify it that way. I mean, that's one way. There are many versions of a recall. It depends on which country you're looking at, example. But the simplified version in simple English would be is that you don't allow just the political party to keep holding on to the seat. No, political parties are not happy with recall because they want the seat back. This is where the challenge comes.
So in a normal version, the low-hanging fruit, basically,
you jump,
you lose a seat. You're not an MP anymore. Then you must run again, or you can if you don't want. It's up to you. Okay. Whereas in recall, you jump. You don't automatically lose your seat or anything. You're still an MP unless the people say we are not happy with this.
There is a process of evaluation.
Okay.
But what you must understand is that if you talk about the mechanism and you break it down, you can never find an answer. The only way to look at it is very simple, is that you tell the voters very simple, I run under A, I offer the A logo, you vote for A, you get A. That's it. Now, if assuming I decide to jump for whatever reasons, as what you put in, political party fired me, or the president doesn't like me, or I went for election and I lost the election with the president, anything, any circumstances, if I decide to leave my party and move the seat, let it be. Let's meet again. Right. It's like going for a gunfight, right? I say I'm strong, you say you're strong. Okay, fine, I meet you halfway. Who's the fastest drawer?
Right.
Because what you must understand is that you must allow the people to decide. It cannot be just the political party that decides, because the political party, some argument says that, look, we run for election for 5 years. We've done everything. This is why the political party says the seat is ours, because they spend for manpower, canvassing, propaganda, manpower. So there's a lot of money spent for the seat. So what they want is that they want back the seat. Now, of course, every political party would want a situation whereby you drop the seat is still mine, we can put someone new and exchange,
Yeah.
But we can't do that because the system doesn't allow that. You have to call back for election. Now, calling back for election is that you cannot stop. There's no like 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. The election can be called every time there is a movement or a jump. Now, basically the only one, the custodian, is the voters that says that I'm going to punish the party or the MP or the candidate because you're tiring me all the time. You jump, you fight, you come to me, you ask me to vote again. You jump, you fight, you ask me to vote again. I don't want to do that. I'm tired. So then the voters will punish and say, look, I don't want you, nor do I want you. Okay, that is what we want to see in the best case scenario. But in some other scenario is that the voters just doesn't want to come out.
Yeah.
So like in some state election, people are saying that, well, less than 50% came out, for many, many reasons. And there may be many reasons why they don't want to come out and vote. But of course, you cannot deny that when you talk about frogs, that hits voters very hard. And the voters hate frogs. So maybe they have their own way to punish the frogs. Whether they punish the frog party or they punish the individual frogs. We don't know. But what we want is a situation whereby the first messaging is the flag. You run for A, you don't stay, you lose your seat. You have to be ready for that. That's it. Now, take the hit like a gentleman. You don't like, you go. And then let's fight again. Yeah. See, because you can hear now, you get a lot of sound bites by politicians saying that, well, the people want me. I can still win. Doesn't matter. I run with whose ticket. I'm very popular. Fine. Let's test it.
Yeah.
So that's basically the final analysis. It still goes back to the voters.
I think for those who may not understand, right, why is it important that we still preserve this, this voluntary versus involuntary sort of idea? Because I think for a lot of voters also sometimes just like some politicians, they don't want to, do the hard work. Sometimes they just want the simplest, fastest, what's the shortest things to get this over with. So let's say, explain to those who may not understand, why is it that we should allow in the sense that, we should still allow MPs to have the option that if they want to leave the party, if their ideologies no longer align with the party, let's say for whatever reason, that they should be allowed to do that, instead of making a blanket rule that no matter what, you cannot leave the party.
Of course it's true, because leaving has a price. Mm-hmm. I'm always quoting relationship and divorce because to me that's the best example. I can tell you, everybody loses. It's the same thing about revenge. Mm-hmm. People say when you talk about revenge, you have to dig 2 graves because everyone will get hurt. It's not just you alone. So you cannot think, So it's the same thing. Because when you offer yourself and you decide to be a politician and you want to be a member of parliament, like my party, 3.5 million members.
Yep.
222 seats. Same thing in Johor. 600 over 1,000 UMNO members. Only 50 seats. Everybody wants to be a candidate. Everybody wants to be a young berhormat. They will tell you the moon, the sky, the stars, everything they tell you. I will obey by the party president, the party, everything we will follow. Then they win. Then they come to power. Suddenly everything is wrong with the party. Same thing like relationship. What? After you get married, everything about you is wrong. So what can you do? This is human. You're dealing with people. So some people believe that, well, I have a post, so I'm powerful. I'm more powerful than anyone else. I want to stay more in power. A bit like Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
They voted for him, they re-voted for him, even his own party, he still stay in power. Even by margin of 1, you're still in power because that's democracy. But what I'm trying to say is that unfortunately, in this relationship, it's not just 2 party between the party and the candidate. It's the rakyat, tri-party. Yes. When you have a tri-party relationship and the rakyat is the majority, the voters are the majority, they are furious because they entrusted in you just to get on with the job. But if you can't do your job, you don't come back to the constitution. That's why some MPs they lose. Lepas dia menang, hilang.
Yep.
That's why people are upset. When you want to canvass, you're always there. Mm-hmm. So the point here is that I think what we are trying to do now, I think for most of the political parties in the PSSC, is that we want at least step 1, the low-hanging fruit. The voters are comfortable. Okay, this is what we vote for, this is what we get. Now, if there's a voluntary jump, okay, let the voters decide again who's the next candidate. Now, if the political party decides to have their own internal fightings, they want to punish, should the voters be punished along the way? The voters are just bystanders. Your political parties is your political parties, but unfortunately, because we have this law called the ouster clause in all associations, especially political party association, you can't go to court to settle the dispute. On one hand, like my party, you have 3.5 million members. And then on the other hand, you have the ouster clause, you can't go to court. So what do? Okay, you have a disciplinary body to raise up. So then you have to think and ask yourself, now, if I believe that I'm a good candidate, why can't I run independently? If you know me and I'm always in my constituency, people know that I'm always servicing. I mean, there are some characters you see on social media, they're very popular with the people. maybe they are the next candidate. Now later, if they decide to join any ruling party, they can offer themselves another MOU. That could also be another way to solve the problem, to skin the cat. But now, from the political party perspective, the biggest problem here is the investment of a political party. A political party is a disciplined setup.
Yep.
You have officers, you have canvassing, you have voters, you have lobbies, you spend money on social media. There's a lot of money spent. It's not so simple like before, like a small NGO or JKK, Jawatan Kuasa Kampung. No, it's huge. Now, because it's a big setup, like a huge organisation, how do you install discipline? Because the problem that you have is that, as I say, I keep reminding everyone. That's why with my party, we went in the state election for Johor and Melaka with a contract with the candidates, because we don't have an anti-hopping law, but we have to settle this dispute. If you leave, what happens? How do we settle the dispute about you leaving? So this is whereby, if you talk about Malaysia facing matured politics, these are issues that we have to talk about. Because if not, people are going to be very, very upset with politicians or elected representatives.
Yes.
If you have the anti-hopping law, you may not even have the Langkah Sheraton.
Yep.
Because you may not have the numbers. And if you have to go again for another by-election because so many people have moved, it's going to be really expensive, and the voters may punish you and you may lose the seat. So what I'm saying is that the anti-hopping law, if we had it then, you may not have the situation that we have today. So that is basically the best take-home concept that we can swallow lah, because then everyone knows this is not just simply main-main lah. You can simply jump because you want power, you want to be minister for whatever justification, because you have to give back to the voters to say, hey, wait, hold on, I voted for you to be my MP. I didn't vote for you to be jumping around and becoming overthrowing government or blah 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 blah. So maybe that would be the best messaging.
Yep.
So that's why I again emphasize that anti-hopping law must be in existence, and it must take effect before the general election, the 15th general election. Doesn't matter when. You don't have it, you will never stop Langkah Sheraton. It will be another 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. I think even the MOU today between the government and the opposition bloc, it's not so simple as how it looks. There's a lot of blame game, expectation. Today, the coalition government, my party, 34%, we are blamed for everything. And it's hard because of the post-COVID economy itself is really going downhill all over the world, not just in Malaysia. So to have stability is much easier to balance, to find solution for settlement. With coalition government, the biggest challenge, it doesn't last more than 22 months. And most importantly, with coalition government, there's always a trust deficit of the people to the government and among the government themselves, because they're not from the same party. So this is something that we have to understand, why the anti-hopping law may be the start for that political maturity and political morality, that political obligation as a start. Whether it can have it's a best solution, it's a long-term solution, I can't even answer that.
Right, absolutely. A lot of people have this misunderstanding sometimes, in the sense that they are just looking at it like, okay, I just voted for this party and I wanted this party to be government, and now they're not anymore. So you've touched on it earlier when you started breaking down the mechanics, but what is the difference between party hopping and coalition formation?
I think party hopping is that you jump, you join political parties. But some political parties have got their own bylaws that they don't accept jumpers from the, whether is it a vertical move or is a lateral move. People assume, my party is that if you leave the party and then you come back, people assume that you can still run again, and no, you have to start from ground zero. Even your numbers will change in the party. Depends on the political party. Coalition is easier lah. It's like, it's not like, not that you're married with no certificate, but, easy to leave lah. I don't like, I just go. But you're still staying with your same principles and values. That's yours. So it's like the MOU lah. You move, Coalition, you join in easy, you leave easy, but you move in as a huge block. Now, moving as a big block is easier to identify that the move is not personal gratification. It's the whole setup. You move as a group. But when you hopping individually, multiple allegations and interpretation can be made. You jump because of this. You jump because of that. That's why if you have anti-hopping law and then you jump for whatever reason, the chances of winning is very slim. Because people are upset that you jump. So you may not want to jump. You have to think, should I not? Should I not? Like for me, for example, I was also offered to jump when it started out, I couldn't leave my voters. I've been there for 4 terms.
Yeah.
They've been loyal to me. They've been there for me. How can I just go because, I want to be a cabinet minister. I want to be in a position of power. I mean, you can, but it depends on you lah. Some people say, well, it's okay as long as, I can take care of my people better. But for that 22 months, to be very honest, I just lived with the situation I'm in. I became an opposition. I accepted the fact this is the reality. Now, people ask me, well, you did Langkah Sheraton, now you are part of a semi-government and you're 34%, whatever percent. You're also like backdoor government indirectly, Well, I'm not in cabinet, So, I take it as serious. But for me, maybe talking about the anti-hopping law, lobbying for it, mooting this, is a way of my contribution. Finding a fairer landscape for all political parties, and especially the voters. Because I believe this would be the marker of change. So that if the seat is offered again, no matter how good you are, the voters may not want you. Because you really have to explain why you jump. Because for me then, in my party, it was a coalition move. They moved as a block. It was easier. Some left first. Although they explained their reasons. But it's really sad because, to be very honest, most of them in Bersatu, let's be honest here, are all from UMNO. I know them for years. It does hurt you because you know them for years. We are the same political party. So no matter how you do, whatever is your justification, is different because now the colour is almost the same, the constitution is almost the same, but it's not the same. So no matter how you interpret it, it's still not the same. So it has its pros and cons lah. But I think more importantly, if you talk back about the voters, our voters, especially with Undi 18, the biggest challenge is that the younger voters or the voters who never voted and they are first time voters now those are all angry voters. They are going to punish because they are watching, and with social media they're reading everything about you. So I think it's going to be hard to be a politician with PRU 15, higher expectation.
Absolutely. And YB, you mentioned that the tabling of this anti-party hopping law will be a marker of change. Why do you say so?
Well, I think most importantly is that we're going in this election of PRU 15 with a pledge or a banner that we are guaranteeing that the voters are the main stakeholders. That's why it's a marker for change because we want to return the voters' confidence. So the voters can say, well, why should I vote? How is it going to benefit me? What about if I vote A and I get B? So this anti-hopping law is just not lip service. It's a law that says, you jump, you're going to be punished. Fine, you can go for election. But we are saying to the voters, okay, voters, you select carefully. Maybe part of your selection process is you select someone who won't jump, or someone who has been loyal, someone who's always there, not someone who's like like the chipmore, cookies kejap ada sekejap tak ada. Suddenly you're there, then you're not there. Why is marker for change? It's where the voters must be confident that they're walking in the ballot box with the anti-hopping law in their mind. Okay, I'm going to vote for you. You jump, you better be careful. Yeah. You come again and offer yourself, I may vote you out. I don't care who you are. Now, I think anyone who's going to pledge themselves as an elected representative is going to be really, really worried right now. Like, oh my God, I cannot think that I can simply, order A, get B. So that's basically, for me, is a marker for change lah.
Before we wrap this conversation up, would you have a final message for us?
Well, I think every voters out there must go out and vote. It's your responsibility. And I also believe that the separation of government, I believe that judiciary, executive, legislative has to be separate so that you can continuously do the work for the people. to be the eyes and ears to monitor, because if not, it'd be very sad, because no one's perfect out there.
Yeah.
And you must allow the people to continually ask questions, because you're there to do work for the people. But if you want to be in power and you want to make it, then just declare that this is not a democratic country. This is anti-democracy. But on one hand, you have a constitution, you talk about democracy, but you're trying to clamp down. You can't clamp down. Social media is not going to allow anyone think that they can get away with everything. It's not going to work anymore. So basically, my takedown message to everyone out there is that you have that right, you have that power, you're given the ability, go out and vote. Don't regret. And don't complain after that if you voted for the wrong person.
I think that's absolutely wonderful. On that note, thank you so much for joining me
most
today.
Welcome.
That was YB Azalina Othman. She's the MP for Pengerang and a member of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Anti-Hopping Law. If you missed any part of our conversation, you can also check us out on podcasts. We're available on the BFM app, bfm.my, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much wherever you get your podcast from. Also, subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Just search for BFM 89.9. We'll be releasing more episodes like these and other shows there as well. I'm Dashran Johan, and this has been Road to GE on Beyond the Ballot Box. Until next time, bye-bye.